use of our time. All right, it is 7:03. It is the 14th of July. This is the St. Mark Street Park Working Group. First order of business, I would like to have feedback emendations for the minutes of May 19th. Anybody got comments?
I have a good amount.
Okay, go for it.
You want me to go first? Sure. Okay. The first heading underneath administrative report on historic commission, it should be historical commission.
All right.
Right there as well under A, Dennington reads a letter from the St. Mark School to the historical commission.
Yep.
The school will hire I said they're technically called the Cultural Resource Management Firm. So I added that in front of firm.
Was that mentioned during the meeting? Because I think it has to be said during the meeting to go into the minutes.
I'm not sure. Maybe we could say archaeological something firm instead, because I believe that was, we were talking about that, but that's fine if you want to keep it that way.
Okay, an archaeological research firm.
Okay.
Yeah, because technically you are accurate in that, but I'm leery of adding in things that we did not actually hear. Okay, fine, thank you. All right, other comments?
Sure. On the second page under report on town meeting vote on Article 25 under A.
Yeah.
I just kind of rewrote that sentence a bit. I thought it could read a bit cleaner. So I said, Farrington recaps town meeting rejected Article 25, comma, which would have accepted the easements containing the parkland and St. Mark Street between the town and St. Mark's School.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make better sense?
Yes, okay, let me make sure I've got it. Farrington recaps town meeting rejected Article 25, which would have accepted the easements containing the parkland between the town and St. Mark's School.
I had containing the parkland and St. Mark's Street.
Okay, and St. Mark's Street. Okay, got it.
Between the town and St. Mark's School, that's right.
Yep, got it. All
Great.
Right.
Oh, this one I actually thought was a bit funny. Under report on history walk designs, under B, it should be plaques instead of plagues.
I caught that too. Plagues, it only feels like a plague, but it's really going to be a plaque.
Plagues
okay.
spreading through Marlborough. No. And then under
accept was accept, right? Expect was accept in
oh yeah, later on. Yep.
Yeah.
And then under report on park designs, AA actually. There are just a couple typos. Signs proposes an area for presentation. I think it was supposed to be like a stage
like yeah,
gazebo, and I said with the back facing the road. I'm not sure if back facing, it was showing me that it wasn't a word, but I'm not sure.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't even flag that as a not word. Gazebo, I think by definition is circular, so I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm okay with back facing, but I'll leave it between you and James to figure it out.
That's totally
yes.
Did you correct it stage like instead of stage like?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So a stage like structure with a back facing the road.
Okay, that's good.
That works. Just two more quick things. One was under B on report on park designs. Accept instead of expect.
Yes.
And then the last thing for me on this was just wanted to clarify the list of documents referred to Was that supposed to be the list of documents referred to for this meeting or for the prior?
Yeah, it wasn't April.
Yes, it would
20.
be, and I did not put in the correct date there.
Oh,
Yeah. So it was going to be for May 19th.
May
That's
19th.
yeah. I
Okay.
put that too. The other thing was I included in there the letter from St. Mark's to the Historic Commission, which I think Andrew mentioned, right? Wasn't that?
Oh, that's right. That's kind of was the most important document.
Right.
for-
Yep. So there were actually
I
3
agree.
docs there. Yep, that's
yeah,
it.
that's true.
Marguerite, question: are you getting all these changes down?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
And you don't even
I will
need
be
to
writing
think
this all
about it
down.
because you have already done more than your fair share with the dreaded minutes. Okay, so that's good. The only correction I would make is in report on History Walk designs on page 2. I would say Farrington presents a PowerPoint illustrating history walks from rural Vernon, Connecticut and Marlborough.
Sure.
Okay, and that's my
I
only.
agree. It does not make as much sense to say presented a history one.
Anyway, that's my only. There and the others were just the spellings.
I have a edit to the second page of the minutes.
Okay.
Report on town meeting vote on Article 25 under B.
Yep.
I would just say Wyshan disagreed with Dennington's statement.
I agree. Yes.
I agree with
Right.
that. I actually don't remember that statement.
Okay. Weishand disagreed. I can't even read my own handwriting. Right. Hang on a second. Disagreed with Dennington's statement. Okay.
I
All right.
don't remember. I think I might have written these minutes, these ones for this meeting quite a while ago. So I apologize for that. Maybe gratuitous quotation.
No, that's okay. I mean, the key is it doesn't need to be a transcript, just a
Yeah.
summary of the discussion.
And also, this is why we do edits during the meeting to get them where we want them. So there it is. Any others, Andrew, on that?
I don't. So if you'll,
Okay, Bill?
so I would move to approve the May 19, 2022 minutes as amended.
All right, second. All right, I'm just writing this down. Move to accept. Okay, and so we have Landry, I, Dennington,
Aye.
Farrington,
Aye.
Nichols Worley,
I
and Mr. Sines.
Aye.
All right, so that is passed. Now let us move to the minutes for May 26th.
Marguerite, we should probably see how Kevin and Freddie want to vote.
I assume they abstained from this.
Yes, they should abstain because they weren't at the meeting, correct?
You don't have to abstain, but it's proper to ask us what our vote is, but you don't have to just because you weren't there legally.
Thank you for sharing that, Freddie. That's good to know. Okay, so May 26th.
So are you going to ask us our vote?
What is your vote, Freddie?
I'm going to abstain. It should be in the
Uh-huh.
record. We're here at the
Kevin, what
meeting.
is your vote?
Abstain.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. All right, so the minutes for May 26th.
Those were the minutes for May 19th.
Correct.
We're now turning to the minutes for May 26.
Yeah.
Yes, emendations and corrections.
I have one on paragraph 37.
Mm-hmm.
I would just delete by at least 2027. It was really something I more said kind of in jest. I certainly hope that it would be completed in faster than 5 years.
All right, so where
Would
would
you?
like to end the statement? Where would you like to end the sentence?
Hopes for a completed park soon, maybe. I think that captures the idea well.
All right, that's fine. If that's okay with you, Andrew.
Well,
Well, okay, how about or hopes for a completed park soon and is excited about having park by tricentennial.
Because I remember what you said. You said you hoped it would be done by the tricentennials because you thought it would be a nice part of the tricentennial.
Yeah, that's the idea that, but the idea is not like, sometimes these minutes get read years later in a way that's
Mhm.
very official, but the deadline or the contemplated date wouldn't be like 2027. That was really meaning it kind of
That was a dry humor that went right over my head. Right. Okay. So I hope.
and on paragraph 42, there should be a space between group apostrophe S and position.
Ah, yeah.
Yep.
I have a couple minor ones as well.
Okay. Go for it, Grant.
Yeah, and paragraph 9, it should be open space preservation committee. Sorry, commission, I believe.
Put the
You can correct
preservation
me
in
if I'm
there.
wrong.
Yep.
But and then it's OSPC.
Yep.
I believe.
Got it. All right.
I
Any-
apologize because then I made that same mistake for the other minutes too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's only twice, just down in paragraph 10 and 12, adding the P in.
Yes. Usually, if I'm doing it, if it's corrected once, I'll pick it up all the way through. So.
Okay, great. And then just in paragraph 15, there was the word bidded down. And I wasn't sure what, well, it was showing as a spelling error, but I wasn't sure what the correct word was supposed to be for that. So
Or just bid.
we're bid down.
Wasn't the
Or just
wasn't the meaning that it was a low bid and it wasn't satisfactory?
It was Andrew who said it, so I'm not sure.
Yeah,
okay. I would just say the plans generated in 2021 were not as satisfactory.
Okay.
Got it. All right. Good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And
Others.
then, oh, sorry, just last one. On 22, there's a question, or there's signs expresses that the DPW is, and then parentheses maybe question mark.
this was a question for Bill because I didn't know if this was an opinion of his or if he was stating a fact.
You might as well make it an opinion. I know it to be a fact, but let's not get into that issue. It's my
so
opinion.
Then we'll it'll be the DPW may be surprised.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's it for me.
All right. Anybody else got emendations or correction? As I recall, there were no documents discussed at that meeting. Is that right?
I concur.
All right, good. All right, so do I have a motion to accept? As
So
amended?
moved.
All right, so, and then do I have a second?
Second.
All right, was that you, Grant? Got it.
Yep.
Okay. Second, I'm just writing this down. Okay, Landry, aye. Mr. Dennington,
Aye.
Mr. Farrington,
Aye.
Mr. Nichols Worley,
Aye.
Mr. Sines,
Aye.
Mr. Miller. Abstain, okay, and Ms. Gillespie.
I wasn't yet a member.
Correct.
I abstain.
All right, okay, so those are accepted as amended, and our last set, June 30th. Do I have additions or corrections? Andrew, do you want to go first?
I don't think I had any, but
Okay.
I
Bill?
will preempt and say that I put down open space commission instead of open space preservation commission.
Actually, while you're there, James, in that same line, it should be Southborough Historical Commission.
Where are we?
Oh,
This is
CA.
under
CA under administrative, and then the abbreviation for OSPC.
Historical, right, okay, got those. Others?
I've got two things. Administrative A, Marguerite's first name is spelled incorrectly.
Actually,
You're welcome, Marguerite.
I hate to say this, but I detest the actual legal spelling of my name. So this
Really?
is my nickname. But
It's
I'll take it either
The
way.
spelling of your first name in your AOL account is different than your town email. So I have never, I'm
I
sorry.
don't
but
know.
you're wrong.
Who is
Kevin.
she?
It's a nightmare. I
Um,
just
I'm sorry to touch a nerve. Just trying to help. All right, here's my other one. It's easy. In discussion and park design, item 4, I would change DPW's engineer firm of choice to engineering.
Okay.
ING.
I didn't know if firm of choice or firm that they are working with.
I think we could say, I think they're
The firm that
technically,
designed the first set of plans.
Right.
Yeah.
could it be engineering consultant?
That's
Is
not
that-
really the same, is it?
I
Or
think
is it?
that's probably true, but
Okay,
It's to be literal, it's the DPW's engineering firm, comma, who designed the original park plans.
Okay, so the DPW's engineering firm, comma, VHB, who designed the original plans. Okay. Alrighty. Any other emendations or corrections?
I have some.
All right.
So number 13. I would say if I supported Miller's number 8, Dennington and number 7, and maybe that was it. The point of views both of them expressed about the Mulligan stool and too much in a small area.
Okay, and
well.
that's on tape. You said it during the meeting.
I did say it. I don't know exactly how I said it, but
Okay.
should we wait till
Maybe-
next month and correct it? Because it
We
was an important
can-
point, my first meeting, that I thought that. And also the part about native plantings, I believe I was more specific than exclude native plantings, but include native plantings, and the fact that the park design originally went to the state granting with the support letter of the Open Space Commission, but I'd have to go back and listen to.
Yeah, I think we
No, I
wanna be
agree that is
careful. Yeah.
I that last point is a bit of a paraphrase. I would agree with that characterization.
Okay. So do you want to
You want to hold these to
revisit?
your next? We meet in 2 weeks.
You want to hold the minutes for June 30th, and then you
Yep.
can revisit that, James, and make a statement that you're comfortable with, covers what we actually talked about there.
Yes, yeah, I can do that.
Okay. And the other thing is that the next working group meeting, 7 p.m., I think it was supposed to say July 15th.
Yes, not meeting in the past.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marguerite.
Okay, so can I
Okay,
move
Marguerite.
to table these minutes unless other people would not want to do that?
I just have one or two quick things.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
And then
All right.
we're going forward. Under number 3, I just added the group's mission is now to generate a written recommendation for the design and themes of the park, which I believe is our actual charge.
All right.
Part of our actual charge.
All right.
And then I just added this at the end because for the minutes for this meeting, in which I'm giving a presentation on people's expressed preferences for the park, I just added point number 14. The group agrees to submit each individual's current design priorities to Barrington, who will compile and present at next meeting. Just in case anyone's like, where's that presentation coming from?
Okay.
And that was it.
And it was actually everybody's parameters for what they thought was important in the park design, right? Is that how we sort of left that?
Yes, yeah, sorry, I was kind of paraphrasing. Yeah,
Yep, that's close
something
enough.
along those general lines. Yep.
All right. Okay, James, can you take that back to the drawing board for just those couple of points, that'd be great.
Indeed.
Thank you again for,
Hey, can I, Marguerite, can I chime in and just say that
please.
James produces a wonderfully concise set of minutes, and they were a pleasure for me to review for the first time today. So good work, James. Nice to hear once in a while.
Thank you. I'm getting better at making them shorter.
Well,
You should have
no
seen the
easy-
first meeting's minutes. It was
No,
5
No easy
pages.
task. No easy task for sure. All right, so there we are on that. I have sort of hoping that we could get out of here in an hour because some of us are got more demands on our time than others, but we may not make it. I would like to know, first of all, item number 2, Kevin, what are the updates on the archaeological dig that you have received?
Okay, and first, I'm really sorry that I was a couple minutes late. I think in the kerfuffle this morning over the meeting link and stuff, I somehow latched onto that 7:30 thing, and I right past Andrew's email late this afternoon.
I'm sorry about that. That was, I'm glad I realized at about 2 o'clock and realized, well, this could be a big problem.
Well, your 3:40 p.m. email says working group meeting tonight is 7, not 7:30, and I read right past it. So,
Oh, because they say, put what you want to say right in the subject line. So that's what I did, but
There it is.
yeah, no, that was my bad. So I was in a flurry of getting and sending email this afternoon and missed it. Anyway, on the archaeological dig by Archaeological Consulting Services, there is good news and less good news, I'm afraid. The good news is that Greg Walwer, who is the director of the firm, the principal, has agreed to come speak at the next meeting of the Historical Commission, which is Tuesday night, the 19th, at 7 p.m. And I have him right at the top of the agenda, which is already posted. He's very gracious about agreeing to come, for the sake of the public good and public disclosure, to come on to our call and sort of explain what the process is for applying for permits, how he deals with the state, how the dig, when it is greenlit, hopefully sooner than later, that's part B of this, how that will proceed, and how someone like him will go about evaluating whatever findings there are. So I'm very pleased with that, and I indicated to him that I thought not only the Historical Commission would be very happy to hear it, but that the working group, which I let him know I was a part of as well, that I would invite you folks. And now I hereby extend the invitation that you join us on Tuesday night at 7 if you're available, to hear what he has to say. I did actually confirm with him this afternoon by phone the appearance, and I got a little bit of a preview, so it's going to be interesting. I asked him just to come and speak as long or as briefly as he likes. So I don't know how long it'll be, but he did agree to take some questions as well. So I view it as an opportunity for all of us, and not least me, to get fully up to speed on what he's going to be doing. So that's the good news. The less encouraging news was that I think the timetable that initially, I was given to understand, that came, from him talking with Rob Kuklovich at St. Mark's, might be a little optimistic, because one of the things that Greg talked about with me this afternoon was that the permitting process in Massachusetts is difficult and complex. And he said, that it was a really, really extensive research and documentation requirement that he went through to sort of put together the package. And apparently it only just went in recent days. So if you're, and I think he expected possibly a month for a reply. So, it's mid-July now. So I got the sense that they might not be in the field until close to Labor Day, or, late August, something like that. I mean, it's all, I'm just speculating based on what he said to me, but I have a feeling, the original thought that came out of St. Mark's was that they hope to have a final report by Labor Day. And I said that to Greg, and he doesn't see it. What he did say, going back to some good news, is that that fairly shortly he felt, after being on site and beginning with the heavy lifting, so to speak, of the actual dig, that he would be able to give a kind of preview of what, what I mean? They know fairly quickly if they're going to be finding stuff or not. And so, he said, again, I don't want to speak for the gentleman, but he sort of indicated that he may be able to give a kind of verbal all clear if that's the answer, or a verbal we've got something here, before actually the final report is fully written out and sort of delivered to the client, which of course is St. Mark's. So like I said, good news on the information front, but a little bit, I'm sure Andrew, this is frustrating to you, and I'm sure it'll be frustrating to the select board, because I know delay, has implications that go beyond our purview, but still it's on my mind, and I feel bad about it. But Greg just indicated that it has to do with the complexity of the application to the state. And, as we know, I mean, government doesn't always move so quickly. So he wasn't anticipating, he's not going to be there August 1st, let's put it that way. So that's the update.
Okay, thoughts, people. Andrew?
Thank you for that information. That's all I have to say.
All right. James?
Yes, thank you very much, Kev. I mean,
Oh, Bill,
I'm
how
going to
about
process that a little bit. I'm glad it'll be done this year, hopefully.
you? Yeah. Bill, how about you? Nope. All right.
It's expected.
Yeah, ditto. Okay, Grant?
No, thanks, Kevin. I guess my only question is, do you have a potential end date for the final report? So you had previously said that you thought that, or at least St. Mark's thought that the final report might be in by Labor Day. Obviously, that's now being pushed. Do you have any idea of, would it be like 2 months delay, or November sometime or something, or just kind of no idea?
Yeah, originally in conversation, and again, just to clarify my role in this, I mean, I reached out to Greg via email fairly recently and spoke to him for the first time by phone just today. So prior to that, my information had been coming from St. Mark's, and their projection was about a month to prepare the submission, a month to get clearance from the state, a couple weeks to do the work, and about a month to produce the report. So based on that, when I was having conversation, I mean, I haven't spoken to the Rob at St. Mark's in, quite a while as well. But back when we were talking about this, that was the outlook that, just looking at a calendar, you could figure out, and what they, I think, optimistically were hoping for. So, again, it's not bad news. I mean, you always want things to go as quickly as they can. And I can tell you that Greg Walwer is chomping at the bit to get out here, and do the work. It's not, what I mean? It's not the firm. It's not a matter of getting equipment. There was some conversation about that earlier. It's simply a matter of the complexity of the process and the complexity involving the state's reply. And he did say to me, for instance, that part of this process is not necessarily one step, which was news to me. In other words, he's indicated that the state might come back and say, well, we need more, we need this or that, or we want you to change something. And, so that part, again, for all of us is frustrating. And hopefully, take the optimistic view. Hopefully, it'll move expeditiously through the review process. But sort of our hands are somewhat tied, I suppose. It would have been lovely, for instance, if the architectural firm had been engaged back in January or February, you know what I mean? And so the cold weather months could have been the paperwork shuffling. And so that this was all primed, teed up by Memorial Day, say, but it just didn't play out that way because it took St. Mark's a while to make a decision. So that's fine.
It is what it is. Right?
Yeah, but it is what it is. So
thank you so much, Kevin. Freddie, what are your thoughts?
Question, not a thought, and thank you for this input. The question is, how does this committee do its work when we have this level of unknown? Like, are there some things we should be working on and others we need to, obviously you have to wait for the final project, but are there some things you can actually accomplish while we're waiting for that? Or does it not make sense to do? Are there some of them that don't make any sense at all because, everything could be up in the air depending what, obviously it is a little bit, but it seems like some things would be more practical to be working on than others.
Yeah, thoughts such as, what are you thinking? In terms of which things would you recommend working on first?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Oh, I have no idea. I was asking Kevin because it's really dependent on how, I don't know what types of things these reports come back with. And I'm sure there's a whole gambit of options, right? It could be, because we don't know. So do you just start planning as if full steam ahead? That's one way to do it, full steam ahead. They're going to find nothing and we just planned for the park area. Or, do we make alternative ideas? Like, what if some of the park isn't usable? Is that something to even think about? I don't want us to be spinning our wheels.
Well, Freddie, those are good points. And I think they go into what Grant is going to talk about now, because I think that he has collated what our thoughts are about moving forward and what we would recommend that the park be containing. And I'm interested to know what everybody else thinks. My thought is that whether or not there are remains there, we're still doing a memorial for the marginalized people in Southborough. So my sense of it is moving forward one way or the other. That's just how I feel about it. And I'm not surprised that the paperwork process is that slow. And Kevin, when you said there was bad news, I thought, oh my God, we're not going to get done until January of 2023. So I think, to me, it's like moving right along. This isn't bad at all. But before we move to, Freddie, that's a good question, but I think Grant's collated data can answer part of that for us. But I would like to file an agenda in case we have a quorum for the historical commission meeting. That we have a joint meeting with you, if that's okay, Kevin, in case we have enough people there who want to talk.
Yeah, Andrew, how does that work? Like, I've already filed our agenda for Tuesday. Would I need to alter it?
No, you don't do a thing.
Oh,
We
you just
filed one that's going to be joint with you.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because the library will do it with the Board of Selectmen sometimes if we're going to present.
Okay.
So we just say a joint meeting with. I don't think that you need to do anything. I'm sure that Jim Hegarty will let us know if that's wrong.
Can I jump back to my question, Marguerite?
Sure.
I thought it was a little bit different. What I supplied to Grant was as if the whole park is wide open.
Mm-hmm.
And not as if, my question is, are there some aspects of it that are, and maybe there's none, maybe we just do that, take that perspective, but are there some aspects of it that, can be looked at or be worked on no matter what happens with the outcome of that? Or is it totally dependent?
So I think, can I take a stab at this?
Sure, go for it,
I
Andrew.
mean, this is something we have talked about. We talked about, I think, at the last meeting and also at other meetings. I mean, one thing you could do is, I think we should just focus on the chart, which is to generate a recommendation concerning the design and themes of the proposed park. And that I think that basically does assume that there would be no significant findings, but that if there were significant findings from this, then the whole thing could be altered. I mean, one of the things we talked about is, and one of the things that's kind of implicit in the charge is, no, we should not just do nothing over the whole summer because of this uncertainty. Because we've also had, this is what, maybe the 6th or 7th meeting. And we could move forward and make a recommendation. And the recommendation could be, this is all subject to change if depending on what the archaeological survey says.
So
Thank you, because
Jeff.
that helps me, because even though you said it before,
Yeah. Okay, because just like I thought a key, thing was the original charge was to fill in a circle in the first set of plans. But one thing that kind of emerged from the discussion with the group was some desire to just look at the plan kind of anew, right? And so that's what we're doing. You're right that this concept, if the archaeological survey unearthed something, then the whole thing might never happen. But the goal is just to start making progress so that the town is prepared if the finding, there's
if I
nothing
can-
really all that significant.
If I can point out, Andrew, that the original charge to do a memorial was when there was absolutely no plan to do an archaeological dig, and we
That's
had
right.
no idea what was there. It was just to do a memorial.
That's
So
right.
dig, no dig.
Well-
So I say we move forward thinking we don't know what the answer is, but let's just see what we think would be a good use of that piece of land. And if that's
I'll
okay
just-
with everybody, I'd like to move into Grant. Take it away.
Sure. Yeah, I'll share my screen here. Can anybody see a PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, let me just, I guess I'll tell you what I kind of did here. So yeah, at our last meeting, we talked about all of you submitting to me your kind of thoughts about what you'd like to see in the park, just anything from general ideas to specific priorities and even stuff that you would not like to see in the park as well. So thank you for submitting that to me. All of you did. And I spent this afternoon just kind of comparing all the lists and trying to come up with a just simple count of how many of the members prioritized, different items to be in the park. And then also I made a table of specific things that members of the working group said that they did not want to have. So yeah, let's just jump right into it then. So yeah, here's the start of the table for the park idea prioritization. So I tried to sort it by ideas that the most amount of members had supported going on to the least amount of members. So the first one is the ADA path connecting, or ADA accessible path connecting the park to another area of downtown. This is something that we all agreed on, that there should be some sort of path connecting the park to somewhere. So that is good to know that we have to incorporate that somehow. So all these were very popular benches and or a sitting area of some kind, likely along, some people mentioned that it would likely be along the path. 6 people also, as you can see, prioritized replanting of trees, vegetation, and or native plants throughout the park. to kind of, well, for various different reasons, either public shade, a lawn of some kind, and just, native pollinator gardens and other things like that. So 6 of us agreed on that. And also 6 of us agreed on having some sort of space in the park for as open space, probably a lawn for gathering. And many people mentioned using it as a space for the library could have story book time or story time, but also just as a general, grassy area. So moving on, we have the history walk here. This one was, I included it as 5 in who had mentioned it, but some had just mentioned that they would like to see the history walk, whereas others wanted only part of the history walk to be on the parcel. This is something that we've kind of wrestled with for a long time about what the history walk would actually look like and where it would go. And I think we, at least we had discussed that it's probably a larger project and or discussion to have with other stakeholders. But five members had expressed interest in at least having part of the history walk go through this parcel. That's why I could kind of coded it as a 5. Moving on to noise mitigation, 3 people specifically mentioned that they would like to see some sort of noise mitigation measures, either plantings or trees kind of along, especially along the 85 stretch where it's the noisiest. And here, moving on to the historical marker, this was actually all 7 members wanted some sort of historical marker. I kind of broke it up into 3 different categories based on the responses that I received. So of all 7 who wanted a historical marker, 3 didn't specify what it would commemorate. 3 specified that they would like it to commemorate either unmarked graves or people who have either been not recognized in the past or perhaps forgotten in some sense by society or excluded. So that was 3 members, and then 1 member wanted to have a marker honoring Indigenous people. Moving on to the last year, 2 mentioned as a priority for them that for having some sort of plan for lighting and safety considerations for the park and making sure that we incorporate that into the design somehow. 1 member actually had an idea to connect the park, which, as you know, is right next to the old burial ground, to kind of open up remove a part of the stone wall and open up a pathway connecting the park to the old burial ground itself rather than going around it. So that was 1 design idea that was mentioned. And lastly, 1 member requested a performance stage area, some sort of gazebo kind of place where people could gather and have lectures and or perform. And then so that was it for the design features itself. And I just had a couple notes that people kind of tagged along with their actual lists and everything. So 3 mentioned that they want it to be, that they want any park to be, any implementation of these ideas to be dependent upon the results of an archaeological dig, which of course is happening now. I didn't know exactly how to include this in the table, but 3 had mentioned that they'd like it to be a peaceful contemplation area. So I thought I would mention that. And then 1 person mentioned as a priority, the road construction. 1 person mentioned the drainage for the library, which I believe has already gone in. And 1 person mentioned the need to evaluate the conditions of the site for soil hydrology, wind patterns, slope, etc., prior to the planting of trees and other vegetation. So yeah, that was it for. Oh, I see Freddie has her hand up. I do have one more slide, but you can speak, Freddie.
Okay, sorry, just for that last one, evaluate site conditions. That's not prior to planting, that's before you design what you're doing in different areas. For example, if you're having the story, the library story hour, right? You don't want the children with the sun blaring in their eyes or the prevailing wind blowing sand across their face from the road, or just sort of, it helps define, and that's not something for this committee, but I would think if VHB didn't already do it. You also don't want the gathering to be where the water drains and puddles, where you're in the, where you're, for a week after it rains, you're still in wet
So
ground.
Freddie, I see your point. What if instead of the word planting, we used design?
I didn't use just planting when I wrote, so.
Yeah, so instead
Sorry,
of it, there were evaluate site conditions prior to design. How's
Sorry,
that?
Freddie, I was trying my best to
Yeah,
kind of condense people's into single bullet
Because I
points.
see what you mean, yeah, because
Sorry about
it's a lot of factors. It's not just planting that are in the air that should be
yes, it's just,
right.
and I think the engineer may look at things like that, I would think, but
Okay.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay.
So just as a note before I continue on to ideas that people specifically opposed, I thought this would be a good exercise just to see kind of areas where we agree. And I think especially on this first page here, we do have areas where quite a few of us are on the same page. So I hope it was useful in some sense. Then moving on to the last slide here, this was, not everyone said specific ideas that they were opposed to, only 5 of the 7 did, and you weren't expected to, but I thought I would just log that while I had that. So 4 of the 5 specifically mentioned that they did not want an amphitheater. 4 of the 5 specifically mentioned that they didn't want a platform or stage for presentations or performances, or for those for the park to be used as kind of active recreational like space for sports and things along those lines. 3 wanted to limit the number of, or the amount of hardscape and pathways along the property to prioritize more natural surroundings rather than hardscape. 2 specifically did not want to see a figurative monument, as like I took that to mean a sculpture of some sort. So we were talking about what type of marker we want. So 2 mentioned that they would, I guess, want to be more of a plaque or some sort of other sort of remembrance rather than a sculpture. 2 mentioned that they were not in favor, or not in favor of noise mitigation measures. I think the reasoning behind that was because the planting, it kind of goes along with the second to last one there of extensive shade and or trees, was that if you plant a lot of trees, I guess I'm not sure how to explain it. That
I can take a, I had mentioned that just because, one, maybe this, I'm just basing on a couple of, a lot of times that I've been there at that site, it's actually, I think it's relatively quiet sometimes.
okay.
And also, exactly as you said, that once the a sidewalk comes in on the westbound side of 85, so then that pushes that back, and then you put in some more trees. You just got to be careful about how many trees you put in, because I'm thinking about, like, I compare this to the Corderville Road park where, just because that's close to where I live, the size a little bit similar maybe, that's also a historically themed park, and just, I think there's a consensus that there were so many trees planted, it's become dark there, and then not enough light goes through. So it's really related to extensive shade or trees. in my
Okay.
opinion.
Thanks, Andrew. So yeah, that's it for me. I I don't think we're bound to this in any way, and hopefully it can serve as a jumping off point to hopefully start talking about some ideas, or maybe there's some ideas on here that some people hadn't thought of or mentioned previously that other people might like. And so yeah, that's it.
Grant, thank you. That's fantastic. Could you flip up to the first page?
Sure. Yep.
It's very, very, very useful. This, I think, is our positives. I'd like to poll the members of the working group. Are there any other factors than these that you would submit as being important to you to have as part of the park? Frederica has her hand raised. That's Freddie, right? You want to admit Freddie, Andrew?
No,
Speaking?
Oh, there you go.
I'm here. I just was raising my hand to talk.
Yes,
Hold on.
please, go for it.
It is related to the ADA path,
Okay.
but I mean, it dawned on me that the number one thing you need is parking for ADA.
Freddie, you muted yourself again.
Sorry, I was trying to get the hand down. So ADA, parking for the ADA, there's the last plan I saw had 2 spots in the library, at the tail end of the library.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that doesn't make any sense. That's library parking that's already needed. It can't be utilized for the library, the handicapped access down there, because it just doesn't work to get into the library from there. To me, this is a park. It needs its own handicapped access. I recommend looking at, and it probably will have a price tag, but is there a way to add, I think it's two spots that are needed. I don't know how many, but adding them like parallel parking on the street, or take a section of the park itself and put those spaces there. That would be a big defining part of the design, because from those spaces, then you have the handicapped access pathways that you can utilize, and it connects to that parking, and then that shapes the rest of the plan. And I know
Okay,
nobody wants to give up.
can I make a suggestion then on this? Because I think what you're saying is really good. That first one, ADA path connecting park to other areas of downtown, I'd put an asterisk there, and I'd say adequate ADA parking needed. Right? That's not part of our mandate, but it is part of the situation.
Well, why I put it there?
So I don't think we should say we're going to give half the park to be ADA parking, because we don't know what the library's going to do, and we don't know what the whole overall design is going to look like, or we don't know what St. Mark's is going to do in their parking area either.
Exactly, Marguerite, can I chime in on that? I was under the impression that the parking lot that's being built right next to it, where the road is now, would most of the time serve as parking for the park. St. Mark's would own that parking lot, but that anyone could park there and then go from that lot into the park.
Right. So
I agree with you, Marguerite, but just to make it why my point is that yes, that's true, except for when that parking lot's full and now you don't have any handicapped access, right? And yes, except for when the library's full, or how far do people, and I don't know, I'm not an expert, I'm just starting to try to wrap my head around how far behind we are on making some good accessibility in town, or not far behind, but how many steps we need to be taking, right?
Well, I think that's a Bill Sines question, and I think that I'd be good for the ADA group to get back to us on, because I have no idea what the new
Uh,
parking area is going to look like, or how
Looks
the
like Andrew
library-
has something to say on that.
Yeah, Andrew, go for it.
Okay, I know you were directing a question to Bill, but just something to throw out there that last summer, the town had a ADA self-assessment. I mean, Bill was there when this was presented, I think.
Mhm.
Town retained a consultant who prepared a very extensive report that went literally like through every town property and assessed whether it was ADA compliant, and then kind of identified like low-hanging fruit, things that could easily be made, brought up to speed with not that much money, things that were harder. So I just mentioned this as maybe that person could, I mean, once you get into having a revised design, that person could give you pretty much a more informed opinion about whether the parking and the paths are ADA compliant or not. For me, I know that it's it's the highest rank, but for me, all I meant by that is that whatever we design should be ADA compliant. I don't think it's the primary theme of the park. I think that's all I meant to say, is that it's important to be, and I think the view of the select board is that now everything new that's going to be designed should be
Mhm.
ADA compliant. And you would
Not
just,
only ADA compliant, but also have parking. Those are just, I
okay,
think,
but
what
there's
Freddie
no
was getting
space
at.
in the park. There's no space in the park area for parking. There would need to be.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
about
Yeah.
that.
I would
Yeah.
certainly wouldn't want any of this to be, right now it's being used for parking. We don't want it to be used for parking.
Yep, exactly. But I do think that number one, ADA path connecting, the whole town needs ADA parking. Yes. So
Okay.
do we
I-
have
I
to
just-
mention that as something that we think is important, or do you think it's understood, Andrew?
I think it is something, and also just kind of thinking ahead to kind of next steps here.
Mm-hmm.
So about, we've been going at this now for about an hour. I mean, I think the show, there's a lot of consensus. I mean, I also think it's significant that it looks like everyone agrees there should be a history walk here, and there should be some type of a marker / memorial, but then it's a little bit unclear about exactly what that would look like or the theme of that. So I think that as a next step, and I don't know if Grant would be up for this, is just to take this and then have a list of like the top 5 priorities. And that'll mean that some of the things that each of us threw out there, didn't make the list, and that's how it works.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. The top 5 priorities for the,
Because I thought the point of the purpose of this exercise was to
Mhm.
identify, to have 15 priorities
Mhm.
is, I think that's too long of a list, right? I'm just exaggerating a bit.
Wait a minute, hold on a sec. We have ADA path, that's 1. Sitting area, that's 2. All right. Open space and the history walk, which is, okay, that's 4. And then a historical marker, which is 5.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
5 pieces. That's 5 parts that we all agree should be here. Native plants, trees, vegetation is the same thing, is going to be part of open space and the whole landscaping of it. I think we all agree if we can do it 100% native, we're good. And I don't see that actually is its own
Well,
agenda, because it's not going to take a certain piece of the park. Do you know what I mean?
The,
And-
the other thing I should mention here, this is, I think it's good to find out, where we agree on things that came to top of mind, but, this can also be a useful exercise for seeing what other people, other ideas people had, and maybe, some of this stuff I hadn't thought of, for example, that, maybe it could be useful to
Sure.
use it as a discussion, or or just to get people thinking. Yeah.
Can I jump in? Because I wasn't clear enough on, just saying that the plants there need to be native plants. I want to revisit the fact that this park originally was planned to be significant. Pollinator Garden. And I'm not walking away from that at the last meeting, and it was in my recommendations. It's not just native plants, so it is a specific, it's not just having an open space area. It is specific to gardens. If you look at the old design and the support letter the Open Space Commission sent, and that, in our opinion, that was a component of why the town got the funding. Pollinator Gardens is a big deal. It's highly fundable, and to what, you know, it's not mentioned here specifically.
Well, it's right there, Freddie. I mean, what I'm
Can
reading there is that the whole thing should be native plants.
That's
can
just
I
what plants are there are native. It's not Pollinator Gardens, which are a
Can I-
specific element.
Okay,
can I make a suggestion, Freddie? I think if we look back at that old plan, we can probably get a specific area that was that was designated for those gardens. Maybe we could say we want X% of this park to be dedicated to the Pollinator Gardens.
Yeah, I just didn't want to, it is distinct from just using native plants and trees, because that's just all of the landscaping there would be native. That's just not inclusive of Pollinator
so was
Gardens.
Pollinator Gardens included on the list of things, or was it just native plants? Did anyone, Freddie, did you write Pollinator Gardens on
Oh, I
yours?
sure did. I mentioned the 2,000 plants that were planned for the last plan, and if you take a
Mhm.
look at it, most of the park was Pollinator Gardens.
Okay, so maybe what we can do where it says native plants, trees, vegetation / pollinator gardens.
Well, it needs to be that specific amount, that
How about like what?
2,000 plants.
I'm
Well,
not
yeah,
looking
or square
Freddie.
feet. How do you want to do that, Freddie? Do you want to do it in
I
square
would look,
feet?
let me look at it again. What
Mhm.
I'm saying to you and what I wrote in my goal letter was that
Mhm.
obviously we're not, if you looked at the old plan, almost all of the park was walkways around these gardens. Almost
Mhm.
all of the park was gardens.
Mhm.
I can send out, I'll send it out after this meeting. I
No, we
understand.
have that. Give us the percentages, and because as far as I'm concerned, we can do the whole thing in native plants and pollinator garden.
If you have gardens, you don't have space for some of these other things. So I'm
Mhm.
saying
Yeah,
certainly some of it comes off, but, and I'm not asking for the whole, all of the land that's not walkways to be gardens anymore. I never did ask for that, but that's
Well,
what,
why not? I mean, it sounds good to me.
well, because you
well,
need
well,
places for people to sit. You need the history walk plaques. You need the, there's other parts of the component that the gardens can fit into, but I think they could play a major role in how we, like as you walk on the walkway going to an area, you're
Mhm.
walking along with the pollinator garden.
So, Freddie, here's a question for you. Where you have something like the library story hour area, does that have to be standard genetically modified grass seed, or can you do a ground cover that would work there just fine so that we could make it 100% native plants?
At this point in time, I believe there are certain areas that need to be grass. Think of it as, for sitting and walking, like we are looking at, and by the end of the summer, even maybe we have lawn alternative areas, but they're not great some aren't great for heavy walking. Some aren't great for sitting on, some of them have flowers, so they'll have bees on them. Do you want people sitting there? They're not, even though we don't want acres of lawn, what we say is for lawn, think scatter rugs, not wall-to-wall carpeting.
Okay, so my question to you is, how much in your ideal universe, how much of that, given that we do want some historical something, that we do want a place for the library and other groups, that we do want a couple of benches and a history walk, what's the maximum amount of the native plants and the pollinators that you would like to see there? I mean,
Well,
it's just ask for it. I mean, how much do you want? That's how I feel about it.
okay, so it's hard without knowing a
Right.
design plan. So let me say 50% of what was there before at a minimum, but no, that's even cutting it down.
No, I mean, just if we're starting all over again, could we do it like 90% native plants?
Oh,
I think
that's too confusing because here's the thing. If you think of a park and it has
Mhm.
trees and shrubs, just a regular park, there's no
Yep.
reason all of that's not 100% native, except for the lawn area. And you have a lawn area where people are going to be walking on the grass, where people are going to be sitting for story hours. You really do want that section to be lawn. The shrubs around it, if you have no, if you made a little circle to enclose it somewhat,
Mhm.
all of those design elements can be additional native plants, but they're not a pollinator garden. Think of a formal garden.
I
Think of the
think
front of the library with the garden, the plantings of flowers along the street, right? You
Mhm.
could do that throughout the garden. You could have one area, a big circle area that I'd really have to look at the percentage.
Yeah, my sense of it is I think that we're all in agreement that the more native plants we have, the more interesting and the more memorial it will seem. So, I mean, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I had envisioned, what could you put there? Let's talk about that rather than saying, oh, we'll only get a certain percentage.
just want to
well,
clarify.
I think
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
can I
everybody.
take this, Grant?
Yep.
Marguerite, I think just the problem that we're running up against with that, and I'm sure we'll get into this with Andrew's point next. He has that is that we have a finite area that we want to do all of these things in. And that was sort of what I was trying to get at when we created all these priorities, is that we can't just go in saying we have 5 priorities. We're going probably to need to be more specific. How much space of Pollinator Garden are we willing to give up for benches and for lawn area? We should sort of come up with a ballpark idea of that.
Can I respond to James's suggestion?
Yes, please,
is-
Andrew.
I think that I do see value in just actually looking at a list of priorities, and then I just can't think without looking at visual depiction of how much percentage of this should go to that. I know, Bill, the handwritten sketch that Bill produced, was like a third, a third, a third. I think it's really more of a process of almost like trial and error, having someone that has experience in this, having a list of priorities, and then coming up with a couple different possibilities, and then having the group discuss it. Okay, here's one where there's too much of this, not enough of that, right?
I think that makes sense, Andrew. I think
That
So are
leads
we
into
moving
your.
to- sorry, go ahead, Grant.
Oh, no, I just, yes, I think, we're kind of in the early stages here of this new phase of park design, but
So
yes,
are we moving into agenda item number 4, which is discussion of role of landscape architect, potentially VHB, in future meetings?
I would like to.
Yes, let's.
Okay.
Okay, Andrew, you're on.
I don't really any other than to say what I said before, which was that we have the availability to have a landscape architect from that firm who told you his name last time, not remembering it. Take some of these ideas and maybe produce some plans, and then that's where it'll really be kind of interesting, where you can see here's ways that you can balance all of these things. I like this, I don't like that. I think of that as one of the most concrete ways of actually getting towards making a recommendation about themes for the space. I mean, the themes is something that's still kind of hard because you still have, like, when it comes to historical marker, we still have some, I don't want to say disagreement, but just lack of consensus about exactly what should go there. I think there's kind of an emerging consensus that in addition to Native American themes, you could also have something that recognizes the information that Dan Blanchard talked about how there are there are people who are buried outside the, who didn't work considered good enough to be buried inside the old burial ground. And that would be interesting. That would be educational to have in a new park that's next to the old burial ground.
Are we anywhere near ready asking VHB to come and talk to us?
Well, I think one thing we could do is, I mean, from this list, we identified 5. We could just reduce that to a list of 5. I think that, by the way, this is really good. Grant that you did this. This is very helpful. I think the next stage is you could just produce into 1 page. And then, again,
Why even do 1 page? Why not give the whole PowerPoint to VHB and say, what can you do for us?
Well, I agree, Andrew, with the need to kind of narrow things down, but the problem I personally see with narrowing it down to 5 or whatever is that some of these might go hand in hand with one another.
okay.
But lighting and safety might have to do with the planting of trees and and other stuff like that. So they might be some kind of goals. But I do agree that we should. I don't know if we want to take a formal vote or we want to think about it or whatever, but kind of.
Would we be open to revising the list now in preparation for hopefully meeting with an engineer at our next meeting, or would we like to revise this list at the next meeting?
How about this? What if we take the entire 3 pages, which to me seem to cover important elements of what we don't want as well as what we would like, and say this is a sense of the group. What would you suggest? Come to us and tell us what your thoughts are on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, would that be because I like the negatives too. We don't want a lot of
You're right.
hardscape. We really don't. Hardscape is like, we don't want a figurative monument. At least some people really don't. We don't want it to be too shady. We don't want active recreation. And I think that's really important data, and I thank everybody for thinking so long and so hard about this. I would just say, give these pages to VHB and say, what are your thoughts?
Before you do that, can you add
Freddie?
Pollinator Garden in?
Mm-hmm.
I thought somebody was typing it in before and now I didn't see it.
Yes. Can I add it? I'm sorry about that, Freddie. As I said, I was just trying to kind of condense everything and get kind of
Right.
consensus. Can I put it with native plants, trees, vegetation / pollinator gardens?
Yeah, for tonight.
Okay.
Sounds
Just
good.
as a single bullet.
Now,
Is
because
this the same guy
I
who made the original plan, Andrew?
Yes. I don't know if it's a specific person.
I know
no,
the
it's a
firm,
different. It's a different one. If it was that same email, and the last name is like Countryman or something like that, and it has a CH in it, which I didn't know whether it was a hard CH or a soft one. But he is a specialist in landscape design. He works for VHB, and I don't think he has been involved in this designing for this area before.
Okay. Right.
I guess I feel comfortable. We'll maybe, do you think, Marguerite, before our next meeting, we can send this PowerPoint with the request to, I don't want to be too vague. I do not want to waste this poor man's time.
Yep.
So-
He'll be paid. He'll be paid. Trust me.
I know. So the request will be to come back with, I think, a sense if these things can work together,
Mm-hmm.
how would they work? Can they work together?
Yes, I think
Yes.
that's perfect because we can talk this around and around, but I think we've had enough meetings that we've really narrowed it in on these are things that we would all like to see in this 3,000 square feet or whatever it is. What A, is it possible? B, could you make it nice? C, come and tell us what you think. It's I
agree.
think we're ready to put it out to a professional and see what they say at this point.
Kevin?
Yeah, if I may, and I apologize in advance if I'm not as clear as I'd like to be. But, I look at the old plan, the original plan, the 141-page document by VHB, and it's all, very nice. But I mean, it has these components that I just find a little odd and exasperating. I mean, relocated picnic pavilion. At one point it had a playground. Of course, it was sold, partly on, the Pollinator Garden, which I think is a nice thing, and a history walk, which, as the chair of the Historical Commission, I think is rather absurd. Because so far as I know right now, at that location, there is nothing historic. It's next to the old burial ground, and it's a place where you could stand, I suppose, and observe St. Mark's. But I don't really, Freddie said in our last meeting, he was absolutely correct, that the history walk here would be at best a stop on a history walk. If we had a true downtown history walk, similar to something that Grant in one of your earlier meetings gave examples of other communities that do this. It's something that would start down at like Parkerville Road or down by the Burnett Mansion. Follow our lovely new paved sidewalks up into the center of town. Would meander through the Burnett Burial Park, the old burial ground, go down Middle Road, part of the new National Historic Registry District. Proceed then east on Main Street, up and down Lattisquama, part of the new historic district, and finally continue and likely conclude somewhere on East Main Street, where there's sidewalks and where there are plenty of very interesting historic houses. I don't understand the whole notion of history walk in this one particular little space. We don't even know what, if anything, is there. So I think that I think we're not going to be putting a red stripe down the sidewalks in Southborough and turning it into the Freedom Trail West. I mean, that's not there. I would like to see and the Historical Society has already done work in this regard of some sort of waymarking endeavor that would mark all the significant historic spaces downtown, and you have QR codes or something you could, check on your phone, or a little plaque or whatever the case may be. But, so finally, I think to myself, if something is discovered on that site, and I have no idea if it will or it won't, then it's game over, right? And you can still satisfy the terms of the grant by restoring that area in the most respectful way as a place of memorial and remembrance, as a burial park, which it may well be. I don't know, maybe it is. But if it is, then all this, what we would be doing is kind of fantasy work. Now, I support making contingent plans because I understand that, exigent circumstances for the town to move this forward, right? So let's make plans. But I just want to kind of, on the one hand, say, I don't want to throw VHB the mandate, put a historical walk there, because that was kind of silly to begin with. And I'm not casting any aspersions on the creation of the notion or the way it was advanced. I don't care about that. But I don't want to waste anybody's time pretending that there's some kind of great significance in that land as we currently understand it, because there is not. The only way it becomes significant from a historical perspective, in my view, is if remains are found there. And if remains are found there, then it's a whole.
But isn't the fact that the old burial graveyard, the old graveyard is there, isn't that part of what the history walk will be pointing to?
May I, one thing I'll just, and then I'll shut up. I would add that, for instance, in talking with Greg Waltworth today, he was, as we all know, quite certain that there are burials outside the walls. That is pretty much a certainty. However, the known ones are to the south and the west, right? The park, the area that, of course, we're talking about for anybody might watch this later, is to the north. And that's the area of uncertainty. So you could, I think, make a very good argument to say right now, because the burials that are outside the walls that we know about for sure, right, that lie to the south and to the west, are likely covered right now by roads, by Common Street, by St. Mark's Street. They, possibly by library property. In other words, we're not going to be ever be able to mark those in properly.
Well, so
Maybe,
Kevin, are you saying that we should forget about the history?
Let
walk?
him,
no.
wait,
What I'm
Marguerite,
saying-
let him finish.
Maybe what we say is we take this area that we're talking about, right? And we say right now, we know there are burials outside the walls of the graveyard, and maybe we ought to be planning to set this land aside, although it's not the exact spot, in other words, and say this is a remembrance garden, and it can have all the pollinators anyone would like, so far as I'm concerned, as long as they don't sting me, and the bees, and maybe that's an approach. But in a way, I just wanted to say this to somewhat clear the air, because this history walk, it's kind of a term that gets thrown out all the time. And to me, quite frankly, look, take a holistic view, this whole area down there. I walk there all the time. You come up past the library on our lovely new sidewalks. You walk up Common Street, right? You get to the intersection of Common and St. Mark's at the corner of the burial ground, right opposite Pilgrim Church. You want to take a right. You know what you're walking on? The street. Because there is no sidewalk and there's none planned, so far as I can tell. Common Street leading to the west of the old burial ground down to the St. Mark's Park. So you're going to have an ADA walk that'll come down past the library, circle around the history walk, lead you to St. Mark's Street, and then, you know what? Wheelchair bound person, you're dumped into the street, because from there, there's nowhere to go. Like, maybe.
Well, Kevin, if I can interrupt just briefly, Karen Galligan told me there was no sidewalk there because there were human burials under the ground and they left it grass.
Well, and there you go. So I'm trying to look at it in a somewhat, I don't know, broader sense. But again, I'm just trying to clear the field in the sense that I eagerly, as chair of the historical commission, would seek a downtown history walk that would travel all the way from the Burnett Mansion into East Main, right? But to my mind, it's silly to think of it that the history walk is going to be confined in this little triangle. What are you going to do? Walk in circles? There's nothing there,
Andrew, before you say something,
We didn't, if I can just jump in here, it's not the entire history walk here. It's just, it was supposed to be passing through. But what I'm gathering from you, Kevin, is that you don't want to do history walk in this chunk. I mean, to me, this was part of linking history walk that went through the rest of town.
Well, again, as currently known, there in some sense is nothing there. I mean, one of the things that, and Grant had put it on his list, I had made the suggestion, it had been discussed in other quarters, about possibly opening up another entrance to the old burial ground, where you would have, similar to what you have at the north end of the Burnett Burial Park, you have a quite lovely stone wall with a couple of granite posts and a wrought iron gate. It makes a very satisfying clunk when you go through it and pull it shut. That you might increase visitation to the OBG by providing access to at the library side of it or at the St. Mark's Park end of it. Currently, of course, the only way to get into the old burial ground other than jumping over the wall is through by the wooden fence, the wooden gate that's right near the front door of the Pilgrim Church. So I'm just trying to look at it in a sort of holistic way. And the last thing I would say, and then I really want to stop talking, is I still think there's some merit in us sort of asking ourselves, what do we want people to be doing there? I mean, the most compelling argument, the most compelling argument I've heard so far, was Bill's, like, I don't want it to turn into a skate park. Me neither. And Marguerite's call for a place for the kids to sit for story hour. I'm like, well, that sounds good because it's right next to the library, and sure, you know, but other than that, do we want people to, you know, we got rid of the swing set idea. That's good. I don't see it as a natural place for an amphitheater personally. We don't want people to picnic there, do we? You know who's going to use it a lot if there's a lot of seating and if it's appealing? James could testify to this, is the St. Mark's students. I would, if I went to St. Mark's and that became a cool hangout spot, that's where I'd hang.
That is why I suggest the park benches is also served for people at the town library to go there and study.
And you know, it might be nice, and it might be nice to think of it as a place for another outdoor space for, you know, library patrons. And I've never gotten.
Kevin, let me see if what I'm hearing you is dismantling the entire list as not being of value. No history
No.
walk, no sitting space, no.
No,
Help me out here, because
no.
I'm hearing dismantling.
I apologize if that's what you're hearing. I'm not intending that. I'm trying to offer some clarity in the sense that I just naming any path that goes through the park, first of all, is going to have to be ADA compliant. So I'm not even sure that merits a place on the list because it's going to have to be ADA compliant. Secondly, any path that goes through the park, ultimately, if there is a downtown history walk, will be made use of. So I don't even think you'd have to particularly label that history walk. And as I said, from the standpoint of the historical commission, right now, we don't know of anything there that's historical.
Okay, so I've got to get off because it's gonna be like a 2-hour meeting, and I'm sorry, but I've got another time commitment. So
Yes.
are we saying yes, we will give this to VHB, or no, we will not give this to VHB?
Not as it is.
It's fine with me personally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So,
that I have.
Kevin, sorry.
Oh, do you mind if I just go real quick, Andrew?
Sure.
So not everyone, because you know we were generating ideas in this you know exercise. So not everyone has weighed in on every idea on this list. Do you think it would be useful if I sent this list to people and you tell me yes or no? I don't want, you know, I don't want lighting / safety, or yes, I want an opening in the old burial ground. Would that be useful to get all 7 members on record to see where we are?
I suggest instead of doing that, we do a ranking system like 1 through 10.
Okay. Sorry, Andrew.
Okay, so
I don't see
that's good.
ranking being helpful when some of these things are coexisting.
Yeah, they're coexisting, it seems to me. You know, to me, I look at this and I say, okay, we've got enough pieces on the table. We need a professional to tell us whether they can be made to coexist on this piece of land. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. I say we've got a number of elements. I can't think of anything else that we haven't included. We may have, I mean, Kevin, you may be right. The history walk may be a joke and we have to take it out. But I think we've got enough pieces there, and I feel like we need a professional designer to look at it and say, yeah, you can do this. They did it in Brockton, or no, you're ridiculous. You know? I feel like. Go ahead.
I don't want to take too much time, but I just wanted to respond to something Kevin said in my idea of how a history stop on that park could be incorporated. And I'm not a history major, major in knowledge for the town of Southborough, but I have a little knowledge that to become a town, you had to have 3 things when we left Marlborough. And the 3 things are all visible in that park. One is you had to have a mustering ground, which is the St. Mark's Field across the way, not the one where they play sports. You had to have a cemetery and you had to have a church. And all three of those would be visible from the park, and you could have a plaque talking about that, and then, the rest of, and go on your merry way. Not that they're on the park, but that you can see them all from that site. It's just a thought. But I understand that there's potentially no history on that park, but it doesn't mean there couldn't be some component. And I'm only saying that because when this whole thing came up, it was the big angst that there was no history on it. There was a lot of, concern about that. And of course, that's very different if it's the chair of the historical commission saying that maybe it's not as great an idea as one thing.
Right, so that's important, because if Kevin, if you don't think it should be there, then that's
And I will
pretty
say something
major.
about the entrance to the burial ground, and they'll shut up. People are cutting across from the library and the stones are being toppled. So if you're where the Pollinator Preservation Garden is, if you look directly across from that, I see people hopping that fence all the time, even Boy Scouts and hope to do some raking in there. And when they climb up, it destabilizes the fence, which stones are falling down.
They're
and
knocking
need
the
to be
wall down.
restored.
So I guess the question is, do we want, would we want it opened up or not? I think maybe we've sort of talked enough for this evening for me. I'd like to hear from Bill, because he usually does a good thing at the end.
Well, I'm not sure what to say. I'm a little amazed at the conversation here tonight. I truly believe that there's an opportunity to tell a story about the history of Southborough. We don't have to have a
Bill,
specific.
your audio is a little fuzzy. Is your speaker in the right place?
My speaker's in the right place. It probably has a great deal to do with some fans that I'm running here, but let me try to speak
Sorry, I just
more
want to
loudly.
be sure we can hear you. Sorry.
Well, all I'm saying is that I think there's a historical story to be told. It doesn't have to be, that is, the park does not have to be on a specific historical location for anything, but it provides a venue to tell something about the history of Southborough. Number one. Number two, the idea of the history walk was to, maybe we should call it a walk, was to make sure that that park was not isolated from the rest of the downtown area. And if people could be engaged in the story of Southborough by walking along that walk, I thought that was a reasonable idea and might be called in that context a history walk. So I guess there's that idea. The third thing I'm interested in is while we have things we like and don't like, or would like to see or would not like to see in the park, it is not clear to me that we have formulated what we want this park to be. In other words, what do you want to use it for? Is there anything that would make this park not only suitable for Southborough, but engage a number of the citizens of Southborough in the use of the park and in the support of the construction and spending of money associated with this park? So what do we want to use it for? And I don't think I've heard that discussion yet, to be very honest. And that's why it might be, while we reconsider while we consider the individual things that we like and don't like, it might be fun just to sit down with our own self in private conversation to try to understand what we think we would like to see going on in a park if it were constructed there, irrespective of what it looks like, etc. What do we want to see happen there? So I guess that's basically my general premise that I'd like to follow in the conversation. I also have to say that I think that area is going to be a noisy area. If we want to use it for reflection, meditation, thinking about stories that we have told ourselves about our history, if we want to do any of those things, we probably don't want to do it among or in conjunction with roaring of trucks along 85. So something needs to be done to try to mitigate that part, mitigate the noise in the park. One of the things that I thought might make some sense was to put together some, that is, here, let me rephrase, let me start again. The whole idea of the park is not to isolate into separate rooms within a house. It is to provide a very broad area where lots of things can be done within that particular space. We could provide things that might be interesting, that might associate or might assist in doing various things, like seating, like stage for presentation, or something of that nature. We would also, if in fact we were putting some sort of gazebo in place, it might make sense to utilize that gazebo and the associated area around it to try to mitigate some sound. That would allow the people sitting in a different part of the park, let's say trying to tell stories to children, to be heard rather over the sound of cars going back and forth around there. Whether that's planting, whether that's sound wall, I don't know. That's yet a discussion that maybe an expert in that area can opine upon. But the idea here, I think, is that the park has to be used by the broad collection of people within the town, the taxpayers of South Carolina, and that it should join whatever the rest of the downtown area turns out to be eventually. And we can do that with trails, sidewalks, you name it. But we should consider both of those things and to try to engage people in the use of those so that that park becomes something other than just a kind of a destination for God knows what back there. Sorry, didn't mean to pontificate, but that's where I was going.
I got most of that down, Bill. Don't worry. I agree. I'm wondering if we should table your item for next time, which is discussion of the naming of the park, because it feels like we're not clear what the park will be. And I'd like to ask, our next meeting was preemptively scheduled for the 28th, but with everything that we've come up against in now an hour and a half meeting, I'm wondering if we should have one next Thursday.
That's a good question. I will go with the sense of the group.
I think
We're scheduled for the 28th, but do we want one next Thursday? Andrew, you're the selectman. You've got the most meetings of anybody here. What are your thoughts?
Perfectly okay if you're busy.
So here's my question. Have we reached the point where we're talking around in a circle?
For tonight, yeah.
Yeah, and
That's where it went tonight.
the things that you said that I agree with is that no, a history walk shouldn't just be a circle in that park. I agree with you. I mean, I think the key is to focus on the charge, which is to make a recommendation about the design and themes for this park. The only way to really, I think, we can have these discussions again. We can have another meeting next week where the discussion might go along the same lines, or we can start to see what examples of how you could balance things look like. It's all tentative. It's all just to start to flesh out ideas. You could see a plan and then get an idea for how to connect it with opening up the old burial mound and connecting things. I agree that makes a lot of sense. It's just something that's not within the charge, but it's a good idea that maybe the historical commission could work on in conjunction with this. I just, and I sense this a little bit with Marguerite, we've had a lot of meetings, and it's just a working group with a charge, with just a fixed charge. And I'd like to just do the best job we can of serving that, and then be available to help if, once there's just kind of a concept, or going back to like a concept plan. And then if there's a meeting of the historical commission, select board, people say we like this, we don't like that, then we could tweak it. But I just think that, like when you're saying, what should we use this park for? I think there seemed to be a consensus based on those goals. One would be, and again, Bill said it very well, to help tell a story about the town. It's not, I think one thing that we originally talked about ideas of having like a gazebo there or a amphitheater there. It seems like that there seems to be consensus that's too maybe intense a use. I've been persuaded by a lot of the points you've made about having this be, a less intense use rather than more, and having it more be thoughtful, et cetera, et cetera. There's only so much that can be done about the fact that this borders Route 85. I'm open to if the designer says, no, there's no problem. You could put in this type of a tree right along Route 85 and that would, I'm open to that. It's just getting some advice about whether you can do that or not. We just can't have meeting after meeting where we talk about conceptual things.
I totally support that, and I'll tell you, as a veteran of many meetings, there comes a point where it gets counterproductive. We'll have the meeting on the 19th, which will be Tuesday, with historical, and I know that Kevin and Freddie, you've only been to 2 meetings so far, but we have been talking since February, and I think that the list that Grant has pretty much, we've gone over that and over that and over that, and it hasn't really changed much.
Yeah.
It's basically, the use is, we're going to look at the native plants, we're going to have something quiet, we're going to think historical, we're going to connect to the rest of the town. What did I leave out? And
We're not going to be able to, sorry.
go ahead. No, and I think it's, for me anyway, it's time to call in a professional who can say, oh yeah, I did this in Sherburne and it was fine, or no, you can't do this, or yes, you can't do that, or it's going to cost $1 bazillion. I would like to talk to a professional at this point and have him present to us what, if he thinks that we're just being hopelessly unrealistic, or if he says, yeah, you can do that.
I would second that as a next step.
Thank
Not
you,
just as a
Freddie.
motion, but
So
I don't need to
let's
go to.
just, yeah,
Grant?
I mean,
Grant?
Yeah, I agree, Andrew, and I think moving forward with the professional is a good idea. I just have a technical question about his from VHB, right? His availability. If we were to say go to him at our next meeting, he comes up with a design or something, would we be able to, like, would he be on call for us for like, hey, we don't like that design, can we come back and
I
remove
don't know. So
no, I think that probably what will happen is we would give him the parameters. We would give it to Karen Galligan. We would say, here, Karen and her VHB person, can you give it to your designers? Can you tell us whether we can move forward with this? What is your time availability? Because frankly, I think we're starting to spin our wheels a little. So I just think we need to hand it over to somebody.
Grant, we could arrange a time where this person could come attend one of our meetings. You're right, there's no guarantee we can say, oh, be here on Thursday or 21st to 28th. But Marguerite and I could look into that. And
Okay.
then if it's in August, it's in August.
It might take him some time to look at the design and draw up some kind of schematic or variations of that.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great. And if we could, if you want to pursue that, Andrew or Marguerite, that'd be good. I just I want to make sure that just by him drawing up a plan that doesn't become like the
We're
thing
locked into
we're all
it.
going with, that
No.
that we'll have a chance to talk about it. And
No, absolutely. No. This is on spec. He'd be doing
So,
it on spec. So
then
here's
I think that's a
my,
great
go ahead.
next step.
Sorry.
No,
Now-
yeah, I think that's a great next step.
Okay, so here's the other thing of it. Tuesday we'll have the meeting. We'll be part of Kevin's historical presentation, which I think will be very uplifting for all of us. Finally, after wrestling with this for an hour and a half tonight, we'll probably say this is really wonderful. James, I like your suggestion, but I'm going to suggest that we skip a week, and in that week, Andrew and I can talk to Karen and also Kathy Cook and say we sort of would like to see what the options were about consulting a park designer at VHB.
I agree.
Okay? And Freddie, you're okay with that? Now, Kevin, how about you?
Sure. Fine. I will, one thing I will say, I think you will not get good design, no matter who you hire or who you use, if you don't have a conception. And I think, in my view, the conception of this for this park should be a place of remembrance for those forgotten and left behind. We have compelling evidence that there are burials outside the walls to the west and to the south. And this park could be conceptualized as devoted to remembrance. Whether or not remains are found on the site itself, we know that they're adjacent. And so if we go with that as a concept, then you can put a path for people to get in and get out. You can decorate it, so to speak, and that's a poor choice of words, but with all the pollinators you desire. You could put a historical marker at some point as appropriate. However, you have to have a conception or you're going to get a bad design, similar to what we already have and paid for in the 141-page document,
Kevin,
5-6 document. So
should we say when we're sending over these ideas that we've said, can we, by unanimous consent, unless anyone objects, can we say, please consider this potential conception for the park as containing that idea, that it be a memorial space for the forgotten people of Southborough?
A place of remembrance for those
Yes,
forgotten and
place
left
of
behind.
remembrance.
Can we use your exact words, which are very beautiful?
sure, I
For
mean,
our concept?
but I don't, I'm not so, I'm not, I want to sound like I'm arrogantly assuming that that's the consensus. I'm just suggesting that.
That was my
I think it's a great.
I was simply suggesting that we should have an overriding concept, and that's the one that I propose. And there I step back and say, debate it and decide, but that's my suggestion.
I'm on that page right now. You got me. You got me at a place of remembrance. Anybody have a problem with putting that into the description of what we want?
Bill?
Yes, I do. Because I'm not sure that's exactly, I mean, what you have to do, if you're going to spend $1 million to develop this park or thereabouts, you're going to have to come up with something that the town will support. If in fact you believe the town wants this to be a park where you can go out by yourself, spend a few minutes and remember things, that's okay. But I strongly suspect that that is probably not going to get the consensus that we need. Maybe Historical Commission and others can develop a consensus in town so this park comes to fruition. But it's my concern would be that that's not a broad enough use of the park.
So can I jump in that there is other uses for it and it connects directly to, you have a story area for the library. I see this as a wonderful space for additional library programming, outdoor activities. And I think people know what to do with a park. If you build a park in the right place, people will come. They will sit on the benches. They will read a book if it has the right components. And if it doesn't have the right components, we put all the components in the world down in Corderville Triangle and nobody goes in there. It's too dark. It's got too much. People are frightened of it. They don't even want to walk down the sidewalk next to all those trees. They cross the street and walk on the sidewalk on the other
Freddie, a
side.
quick question. Who designed that park?
I can't complain because it was done by a committee and lots of public input. And, I wasn't on the prevailing side of how many trees and what should go in there. So there's lovely components, there's history, but nobody uses it, very rarely. And I will just say one other thing for the sound issue. I think we need to check out how noisy it really is. I don't know of anyone here who has sat in that area outside hours on hours every week almost for the past year, winter, spring, summer, and fall, as we have created the design process for the pollinator preservation area. And I don't know that that is that far away from the busy streets than this park is going to be. And it just, in my mind, isn't that noisy. It's not the same thing as being up on the front of the library with Route 30. And I think trying to solve a problem that may not exist, you know, about the noise constraint. You know, we have lots of programs right there at the edge of the library, and even furthermore, where it's even noisier on the edge of Route 30 and 85, where more, you know, the trucks slow down, the cars slow down, and, you know, so there's more noise on that
Well,
intersection on St. Mark.
here's the thing, because we're heading to 8:53, and I don't want to cut you off, but can we take the noise question and put that to the VHB park designer also? I mean, I would see that in Grant's list, all of those things are things that we would like answers to, basically. But I would really like it, because we've been 2 hours now, and I think
Yeah.
that's where we've reached the finish line. But I would like to use Kevin's A Place of Remembrance for Those Forgotten and Left Behind as one of the prime concepts behind this. And I think that what Grant has on his PowerPoint really is summarizing 4 months or 5 months of discussion. And I think it's time to hand it over to somebody who can say, yes, you can implement this, or this is ridiculous, or this is wonderful, do more of it. So
I agree.
if that's
Agree.
okay, then we'll see historical on the 19th. I'll put an agenda for that. We'll meet
I
on the
probably won't be
28th.
there, but just because
Okay,
I am very busy on some work stuff.
yeah. I know, this
We'll
early
update
morning
you.
thing, I know. I'm sorry, Andrew. Anyway, so we will do those things. We meet on the 28th, and meanwhile, Andrew and I will go to Kathy and also Karen and VHB and come back to you with what we find out from that. How's that? Does that work?
Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everybody. You've all been
Marguerite,
wonderful.
I'm-
I know it's been a long 2 hours.
Marguerite, should I send my PowerPoint to you, or who should I send it to?
Well, you could send it to all of us, which would be lovely.
Oh
and
boy,
then
we're
I will-
losing people. I move to adjourn. We're
Oh,
losing
thank you.
people.
Second.
Bill
Okay.
voted with his feet. Virtually
Um,
voted with his feet.
Who did we
Landry.
lose? James, Andrew,
Aye.
Mr. Farrington,
Aye.
Miss Gillespie, Freddie? Okay, and then Kevin?
I said aye, sorry.
Oh, sorry, you were muted. Okay, Kevin?
Aye.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now who did I miss? Oh, Bill.
He left.
He left us. Oh my God. Anyway,
Yeah,
all right,
Grant
thank
just-
you, everybody.
That was
I
another
think-
Can
way
Grant
of
CC it to
expressing
all of us?
support of the
Yes, that would be great. I think we're getting there, people. It's just been a long summer.
Night, folks.
Okay, thank you, James. Bye.
Everyone.
Good night.